TikTok hates time blindness. Oh my god, I was watching this earlier at work, so yeah, it's interesting
Welcome
for
back to
sure.
the drama. I just shot this video and halfway through spilled
I
water
watched like
into
half
my
of it.
PC and
No worries.
everything shut down. So now we're restarting the video and let's do it. Today we're looking at another random civilian on TikTok who has brought mass attention onto themselves. Of course, not purposefully. But about a week ago, a TikTok with the title Workers' Rights was posted, and it now has 4.5 million views and has caused controversy around this country. Okay, let's watch it.
So I just got yelled at for asking a very reasonable question. So I'm applying to go somewhere, and I just wanted to know: are there accommodations for people who struggle with time blindness and being on time?
So
Yo, what? What
I'm
is
gonna stop the
time
video very
blindness?
very quickly just
First of
because
all,
I feel like a lot of
and like
people
I
are gonna
said,
be
I saw
confused off
this
the
part,
bat.
but
When
I'm
I recorded this
still
video for the first time, I kind of let the whole
I
thing
th-
play, but I feel
I swear I thought she said like I don't know what I thought she said, but I don't think it was time blindness.
like
Even though it does say that in the title, I just didn't look at that. I guess I don't know. I'm stupid.
it is worth it to at least get an idea of what's going on here. I'm sort of learning about this drama as I tell you, so hang on. So this girl is applying for what I assume would be a university. I'm assuming she's trying to apply to colleges. She's on the phone with someone from the college, and she asks the question,
Are there accommodations for people who struggle with time blindness and being on time? You know. And then the person I was with interrupted and acted like I was
I got one
asking something
shot.
else. And then when we were done, they actually started yelling at me and saying that accommodations for time blindness doesn't exist. And if you struggle with being on time, you'll never be able to get a job.
okay, so
I
let
mean,
me let's back up for a
she's not
second. Now,
wrong.
this video,
W
of course,
Mance
blows
for
up. The
real.
big reason that
W
it's blowing
what's
up
it
so much,
called?
of course, is because there are
W
a lot of people
interviewer.
making fun of her for using the term time blindness and being upset that a college wouldn't offer accommodations for time blindness. And so we will look at the comments. We'll see,
Let's
whoa,
go.
this lady has the same name as my mom. I found this article on time blindness written by my mom. What's up? So of course there's a lot of
Joe
people who
Green.
sort of scoff. They scoff at this video and they go, this girl wants accommodations for being late to work. And that's like the general consensus of most people, especially people who like aren't very online in the world of Zoomers who are neurodivergent. And I am a neurodivergent Zoomer. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 14. I've been medicated since then. And I am someone who has received special accommodations for my ADHD when I was in a university, which means I have the right to talk about the true take you should have on this opinion. There is no
That's right,
like
Nick.
true take, okay? We'll get to it. I think there's goofy parts about this story. I think there's parts that we should touch on, but let's start with the time blindness thing. A lot of people are confused about what time blindness is. It sounds silly. I don't blame you. Let me
It is
try to
silly.
explain at least from
Time blindness is basically what like okay, I have ADHD, right? And it's like self-diagnosed. So before yeah, I have ADHD. And a lot of the times I'll be doing something and I forget like what I'm what I initially was supposed to be doing. So I will like start cleaning randomly and all of a sudden I look into the fridge and I see that there's like water, the Brita needs to be refilled. So I start refilling it. And then I as I'm at the sink, I see that there's dishes in the sink. So I'm like, all right, let me start doing these dishes. And then as I'm doing the dishes, I see that the drying towel needs to be cleaned. So then I put that in the washing machine. So then I constantly am like adding things on until I finally don't see anything that I can add on and I start working backwards. And then by the time I get done doing what I was doing in the first place, it's like hours have passed. And this person is well, that's basically what time blindness is.
what I have read what this is. So time blindness is a pretty popular symptom of ADHD. It also exists pretty rarely in neurotypical people, but people with ADHD, of course, have been studied and proven to have a problem with the perception of time. It's really difficult for people who have this symptom to be able to tell how long they've been doing something for, how long they have left on a certain project. I mean, there's plenty of symptoms for it. Of course, this article, do your own research or whatever, but time blindness shows up in a bunch of different ways: underestimating, overestimating how much time has passed, chronically missing deadlines or arriving late, even for things that you're excited about, difficulty making a realistic schedule or sticking to a schedule, constantly losing track of time, frequently feeling like time is slipping away. These are things that I think everyone experiences in small amounts, but for specific people, it is a much bigger problem. And it doesn't just necessarily boil down to someone being inconsiderate of others' times. That's never really the intention with
I
people
mean,
who
that's what it sure
have
sounds
symptoms
like,
of
to be
time
quite honest.
blindness. And I know you're starting to get bored, okay? I'm teaching you about science and stuff.
Oh
But yeah,
my.
basically the idea is that, you know, universities can give accommodations to people with disabilities or people who have specific needs that need to be met in order for them to be in the best environment they can be in to learn, I guess. So the only accommodations that I got when I was in college for my ADHD, OCD was having more flexibility, choosing my schedule in school so I can be better organized, and I can have my classes right next to each other, so it's not like I have to go back and forth from being at home and going to school all day. And then I'd
Do
also
that.
be offered things like extra time on tests or a quiet space if I need to take a test and I'm too distracted.
True
Those are
that.
the sort of things that colleges can help you out with
Shout out
if you are
Sister
someone
Ann.
that
You're a
does
real
need
one.
help with schoolwork or attention or whatever it is that you might need. I'm starting to realize, though, that this original TikTok might be about a job. Originally, I thought it was about a job, and then I'm like, oh, this is about a university, because she was saying she was applying to go somewhere. But then the hashtags say hashtag workers, hashtag capitalism sucks, hashtag capitalism, hashtag the system is broken. So, okay, I'm getting a little scattered. Let's get back to the TikTok and then we'll talk about this.
And if you struggle with being on time, you'll never be able to get a job. You know, provided you're trying your absolute best to be there. And then they're like, your stupid generation wants to destroy the workplace.
So she originally says that she's in the room with another person who kind of cuts her off and asks a different question when she asks the question about the time blindness. And then she goes on to be like, oh, people in your generation, this and that, and says that the person yelled at her saying that she's never going to get a job if she can't, you know, manage her time correctly and just like be a normal
Which
person.
is very true.
But I did hear
Be a
from
normal
someone, and I don't
person.
know when
No,
this is going to come
it's
up.
very true. If you cannot handle your ADHD and are not getting a handle on it, yes, you're you're just being lazy. I'm gonna say it. You're being lazy. You're not taking care of yourself, and you're an adult going to college or looking for a job. You need to learn. You need to understand how things work. Nobody's gonna make accommodations for you because you have ADHD and can't make it to class on time or to work on time. Like, that's ridiculous.
I did hear that that person's her mom, and it does make a lot
W
more
mom.
sense that way, that this is the person's parent. This sounds like a very normal thing that parents would do, right? At least in like our generation, it's a whole thing of like parents struggling to understand the needs of people that understand that they can perform better or be a better student or an overall more helpful human being if there are certain accommodations that help them out with their disability. A lot of this TikTok is someone who is in a fight with their parent, and that doesn't mean that one of them is right and one of them's wrong,
It
but I feel
does.
like it
The mom is
changes a
right.
lot of things about how the story is perceived. I just don't think we should be making huge assumptions based off of what we see here. Let's watch the rest of the TikTok though.
And yeah, I think that a culture where workers are just cut off because they struggle with being on time, when there's other solutions that we could look to, I think that just anybody who thinks it's okay to just treat people like that, yeah, that culture needs to be dismantled. And then I asked that person, how can you feel good about yourself upholding this kind of system? And then to think, I'm entitled. No, if people think it's okay to treat others like this, that's entitlement.
If it wasn't for Grammarly Go, putting our website together would have taken so much longer. You'll truly be amazed.
Okay, so the argument dies down. I think probably best.
Yeah, I'm entitled to keep my job. And if you don't show up on time, right? If you don't show up on time, or if you don't show up to class on time, you either will fail or you'll lose a job. So yes, it is a sense of entitlement. Yes, you need to be here on time. If you're not, I'm not making accommodations for you. Now I got to make accommodations for everybody who just has time blindness. That doesn't make any sense. Now nobody's showing up. We're not making any money. And I look like a douche because I'm the one who allowed this to happen.
To leave it
That's
off of
ridiculous.
TikTok,
It's not happening.
but you know,
What
that's
did I
neither here nor there.
do?
Hindsight 2020. This video is posted and it blows up on TikTok and
Stop.
everyone's just flaming this girl. You've got comments that say, LOL, early to bed, early to rise. It's called adulting. Time blindness? Grow up, honey. Millions of
Stop.
others can do it. You
I
aren't
hate my life.
special or above anyone. Thanks for my little laugh of the day. Accommodations for time blindness. She responds, says that time blindness is a
karma?
common part of ADHD. It's not a disability itself. The world is so cold that everyone lacks basic empathy. Just constant comments. Self-victimization will never lead to success. I think the other solution is taking responsibility for yourself. Genuinely thought this was satire. The TikTokers are coming after her today. And listen, while I understand how a situation on one hand can do something like this can look really funny for someone, like, oh,
It is
someone
looking funny to
struggles
me.
at making it on time to places. Welcome to being a teenager.
And welcome to
that,
being an
and
adult.
I get it. I think there are parts of this that come off as a little goofy to some people. If someone tells you, oh, I want accommodations because I struggle with perceiving time, with getting things undone,
I
things
am,
undone. It's really easy.
first of all, that was weird. Second of all, if you're needing accommodations because you're struggling getting things done on, okay, now I see why he was struggling. Okay, if you're having issues getting things done on time, that sounds like a skill issue, bro. Like, what are you doing in life? You're 18 years old and you came up with this excuse? I feel like this is just an excuse. This is an excuse. This is an excuse. This is a joke. That's what this is.
Easy for someone to turn around and be like, just use an alarm. And on one hand, sure.
Literally
we've been
just
given,
use an
like, this
alarm.
infinite amount of resources when it comes to tools that can assist us when it comes to learning or working or socializing or whatever facet of life it may be. Of course, there's still a responsibility on yourself to try to manage that time the best you can, to take care of yourself.
robbed me.
It's all self-care. It's all
I got
for
robbed
you
with that
to be the best
one. Alright,
person
I
you
know what
can
I'm
be.
doing now.
With all of these, comments not crazy about it, there's a lot of people who have very valid questions, right? People are like, if you don't show up for your job, then someone else has to do that work for you. You can't work at
What
a
I was saying.
hospital
And then if
just
they don't
call
wanna
off
show up,
work
then
because
what?
you didn't perceive time correctly, and now all of a sudden, this doctor has to do a heart surgery. But that's something that's on the extremes. For a lot of this, saying that you have time blindness
Funny,
or
but it's
whatever
very
term
real
you want to
thing.
use for it, there are real accommodations that can help with that aren't as crazy as people thinking that she's asking to just show up late to work whenever she wants, or push off deadlines as far as they can go. Now, in a term of like a job, there's only so much you can do because your workers have to be there on time, or else someone else has to do that work, or else the job doesn't get done. And depending on the job, this employee could cause the entire business to fail if they aren't there for their job. And so in a lot of ways,
That's
people
what I
look
was
at this kind of
saying.
stuff and they go, well, I've always had to show up to work on time. Why does anyone need accommodations for something that you should just be able to use an alarm for? And yeah, I get it. I think it's fair to at least ask that. I think it's fair to think that the whole time blindness thing is like silly and you're thinking about it a little too much. I don't know if that's completely fair. I think in a setting like university, it'd be very fair to ask for accommodations for time, and struggling with time in general is something that students could.
Is struggling with time at universities and asking for accommodations right then and there. You're setting them up for failure. That's when they're adults. They're 18 years old. You're starting your first job at 18 and going to school, right? Because you want to party. Unless you have like rich parents, then you could just ask them for money. Other than that, you need to work and you need to learn the concept of time and how to be on it. Period.
Could always use, and especially those who suffer with it extra. There are symptoms in ADHD that are harder to control. It's not really as simple as like just telling someone to focus. And of course, this is different when we're talking about something like time perception versus focus, but I still think it isn't the craziest thing I've ever heard of. It's not like this mind-blowing Zoomer terminology that's just destroying my brain. And again, I know there's a lot of people that watch stuff like this and they go, okay, we don't really need to post the video of you crying in the argument with your mom and this and that. I think really we should all not be a part of this. But it seems like TikTok took it onto themselves to really just not let up about this. Like, there are so many people who are like, if you can't be at your job at a certain time, just like plan for it beforehand. I have
Or don't
motivation
get the
deficiency.
job.
My boss has no empathy. And listen, I know I'm
I
playing
have
both sides here
motivation
because I really
deficiency.
am just kind of
My
like,
boss has
ugh,
no empathy.
like, who
It's
cares? Why are
crazy.
people just mad about it? But then on the other hand, I'm like, it's TikTok. Like, I don't know. You should have seen this coming. These people are just like, they're waiting to goof on somebody. I mean, look at me. I'm making a video about it. And this caused a lot of TikToks to be made like this one that were,
Applying to go somewhere, and I
kind of
just wanted to
goofing
know,
on
are there
her.
accommodations?
That person is upset about lack of accommodation for time blindness, which is essentially complaining about not being allowed to be late all the time.
And listen, I want to goof on someone as much as the next person.
do I
I
get
know
up
I'm
there?
being kind of lame in this video because everyone's being mean and I'm trying to be Mr. Nice Guy and look at both sides. But I do think at least we can say that it's a little bit in bad faith to say that the time blindness thing is essentially complaining about not being allowed to be late all the time. I would bet that that isn't really what she's asking for specifically. We don't even know the job she was applying for or what it was she was applying for in the first place. There for sure could be parts of the job that she is worried she will struggle with. Do I think that you're going to get the best response by asking for accommodations to time blindness? I don't think it's the most strategic way to go about getting help for something like that. But at the same time, I am looking at what people on the internet are saying, and most of my response is just like, can we just like lay off a little bit? Like, this is a kid who is going through a hard time and
What do you mean
can't
hard
really,
time?
like,
No,
I don't know. Let's
no,
just
we
keep watching
cannot
it though.
lay off.
About not being allowed to be late all the time. So I want to share some accommodations that are readily available for people with time blindness.
So this is a clock. You probably have a few around your house. They actually make clocks you can wear on your body. It's called a watch. And if you're worried that you'll forget to check those clocks, there are also alarms.
And this is like the common joke. It's like, have you heard of a clock? Have you heard of like just planning ahead of things? And I do think that the person in the original TikTok could have explained her reasoning in a better way, as we'll come to see. But at the same time, I think that symptoms like this exist in more of a way where you're trying to complete a task and suddenly you get lost in something else and completely forget what you were trying to do in the first place. Of course, we can look at the kids and go, oh, look, you're lazy. You're just trying to do another thing to get yourself out of work. But I think it's pretty
mean, it
obvious that
is.
the person in the original video isn't trying to take advantage of this time blindness thing. It more seems like she's kind of struggling with being able to work and struggling with
Doesn't look
figuring
like from
out
this end,
the
Nick.
most
That's the L take.
advantageous way for her to get things done, and it doesn't really seem like anyone else is trying to help her out in that regard. And I know that's not really like the funny answer or whatever, but I also am like, guys, like, we don't need people like this to just like dig their heels into someone who is like going like is just not understood. I think this is more something where we should look at the person making the video and say, okay, the original issue we're looking at is that this girl does not feel comfortable in whatever position she's applying
wants to
for
get
because she
the
thinks that she
most.
might have problems
She wants to
with
get
her
the most amount
ADHD
of pay
that
with
would
the least
conflict
amount of
with
work,
that. And there are
right?
people who are
And
on the
who
other
can
side
blame
of
her
this
for that? But
agreeing with a lot of what she's
I
saying.
mean,
So this is someone who is stitching. Is it this a stitch or a this is a duet? This is someone who's duetting the
God.
original video saying time blindness is real. Too many old and young bullies have stitched this creator to act like the very people she was talking about. It's not a generational thing or fixed by having an alarm clock, as I've seen many people say. I suspect there's also people who unknowingly suffer with it, that have gaslit themselves into submission, been bullied over it, and think they should get it together like they did. And I think a big reason why I went from thinking that this situation is pretty goofy and it's a classic online drama to suddenly feeling just kind of bad for her is because I kind of see myself in a lot of what she's saying as a younger person. I grew up all my life wondering why it didn't feel like my brain worked in the same process as those around me. I didn't
I
have
mean,
the
I
motivation
never
to do
did.
schoolwork.
So first of all, like, I knew there was something up because like I overanalyzed stuff, and there was a lot of things that I noticed that I was doing that other people weren't doing. But I mean, and again, I know I can just apply this to me only, and experiences may vary. But I'm just saying, I don't know, man. I figured that out at an early age, and I didn't even get help. I didn't get help or anything, right? Because I didn't know what the hell was going on. I just thought, they just taught us like, hey, everybody's different. It's all good, right? It's all good. So I just live with it until now, and I'm figuring out, well, maybe I do have some issues, right? But I mean, I think it's a bit too late because I've already found out solutions for the issues. It's called grow up.
And even if I did, it was really tough for me to actually hit deadlines and work in a consistent way. And it's still something I struggle with now. A big reason why I make videos every single day is because if I'm able to focus in these small amounts of time and sprint my way through my job, then I can actually get things done. And there aren't a bunch of little unfinished tasks in my head where it feels like I have to complete 1/5 of a video every single day. That is an accommodation I set for
I got
myself because I
crushed
know it
on this
helps me
thing.
more with the work that I'm doing, and that a regular work environment, like a 9 to 5 job, would not be as well suited for someone like me. I was told my whole life to just focus, like it was the whole thing of just being like, if you keep spacing out in class and you aren't learning anything at school and you literally aren't retaining information in your brain, why don't you just try to focus a little bit more, huh? Why
Yeah,
don't you,
that's terrible.
maybe if you do it in colored
Terrible.
pencils, it'll
Yeah.
work better. Maybe if you get an app on your phone that helps you with your schedule. We're talking about a psychological disorder. I don't know. I just feel like the
Yeah.
internet is a
No,
little
he's
bit
right.
better than this, than to
Right.
just like, I don't know. I get why people would think that this is goofy, confusing, whatever. I honestly was kind of like, thought it was funny when I first watched it. And, there's still people who are trying to respond in good faith. I don't know. I'm trying to open my mind to that. It's hard because you can set alarms. And I feel like everyone is putting her issue under this umbrella of like, I sleep in and I'm going to show up to work late. I am absolutely not saying
That's
that
exactly
every
what I
single
think.
job needs to implement like accommodations for people who struggle with being on time. In a lot of ways, I think that most jobs don't really need to accommodate for things like that because it's not necessary with the actual task that needs to be done. There are a million different ways that your brain can psychologically affect the way that you complete like everyday tasks in general, And I see a lot of confusing comments like this, and we'll look into it, whatever. But it's like she admitted she doesn't even have ADHD. It was her mom yelling at her for trying to ask her to go to trade school. Someone says she wasn't applying for a job. She and her mom were booking a cruise, apparently. Her mom yelled at her. She lied and we
All
fell
right, this is
for it.
hurting my
But
brain.
listen, that's my, personal opinion about it. Let's
I'm gonna
see
try this
what she
one
followed
more
up with,
time.
because I'm interested to see where people go with this. I don't know. Like, I wanted to join in on something that I thought was going to be funny, but the more I look at this, it just feels like
Kind of sad.
dogpiling, and it's the same kind of stuff that parents have been telling kids forever about their mental health. I think we
Because
need to give a
true.
little bit more space
No, we
to
don't.
young people who are struggling to figure out their identity and the way that they function, and doing all
No,
that while meeting the most
their
amount of
identity
people they
fine.
will
The
really
way that they
ever meet
function
in their
fine,
life. It's
but you
a
can show
lot
up
to
to work on
throw on
time.
someone. And I feel
Period.
like boiling this down to just, oh, this teenager doesn't want to work, it feels kind of like reductive from what a lot of people have been trying to say online about mental health. It feels like, I don't know, it's so boomery. And listen, I'll say the same take I said earlier in the video. Sure, I think there are parts that seem funny to people when they watch back the original video, but I do think that this is like a case of a lot of people being intentionally ignorant to try to make fun of someone just because everyone's dogpiling on her. I'm not
No,
necessarily
I
saying
don't
she's
think that.
completely
I
in the
think it's mostly because she's literally saying that she has time blindness and cannot go to class on time or cannot go to work on time, and there should be accommodations made for her. I think that's why people are making fun of her, because I think it's a term that there's a term black people call CP time. Yeah. And everybody knows that, black people just show up late. A lot of black people just show up late. It is what it is. I mean, I do not ever. I'm kidding. Sometimes I do, but like for the most part I don't, because I know there's a stigma against it. And not necessarily that it's even a bad stigma. It's just like I don't want to be that guy that's showing up late because he's on CP time. You know what I mean? It's like you shouldn't really be embracing your time blindness. You should be finding out solutions on how to get better at not being a fucking loser, to be quite honest.
Right, but I do think it's kind of sad that this is the response rather than people being open and honest about the way that someone is feeling, maybe. And maybe I'm being nicer about this story than I have been about people in the past, and I think,
You
I'm
are,
not
for
always going to
real.
have the correct initial reaction to something, and I don't blame other people for reacting certain ways to the original video. I'm not trying to like shame everyone who's watching this, but like, I don't know, calm down is all I gotta say. Okay, here's her first response to everything.
When people ask me, how does it feel being the time blindness girl and have everybody bashing you constantly on Twitter and Instagram? And all I could say is it's a testament of what the United States has become.
Oh
And
my
we hear
god.
about algorithms, political radicalization, and how the internet is influencing humans, and we think, oh, okay.
Not the
But
algorithm.
then when it happens to you, you see how big of a problem it is. Because when we can no longer have a civil discussion about a video with very little context, it makes you wonder, is there even a future for our nation, and what future is there to fight for?
Nothing.
Now, okay, I can
Absolutely
already
nothing.
see.
There's
It's like
nothing to
I'm
fight
playing this
for
game.
if they're not gonna let you show up to work on time because you have time blindness, or have any accommodations for you, or at least a plan B, at on call plan B for whenever you want to show up to work late, or I don't even know if you're showing up to university. I guess late. God, what is our food doing to our youth? Holy crap! She looks my age. Jeez. How old is she? She looks old enough to know the difference. She looks old enough to know how to work an alarm clock. I'm gonna be real with you. That's what
Game
that's
where
what
it's
this is
like, I
giving.
don't know, it's like every time I try to criticize something she says, I kind of turn to the rest of TikTok and realize that they're already being way too mean. So there's nothing
How are they
more
being
that
too
I really
mean?
should say. Now,
There's not
this says
any more that
political
you should
polarization is more
say.
of a threat than we could ever
Oh, but
know.
there's some
And
stuff
she
that you
kind of
can
makes
say that'll be
the
funny and
claim
relevant.
that capitalism as a structure leads to this kind of hate online and this kind of wall that people put up to stop them from having real conversations about things. And I think this whole like drama or whatever is more of a symptom of conflicts online than it is a symptom of Zoomers thinking that they're like disabled or whatever and they need to stop victimizing themselves. And she does say without context there, which is true. Of course, she's the one that posted that video and left out a lot of the context that she thinks is necessary for the conversation. But at the same time, most people post a video not expecting it to get like 5 million views and all of the sudden have everyone
So then
dogpiling
why
on them
post it?
without even knowing like actually what happened, what was said, what she's applying to, what specific accommodations she wants to have. It seriously just feels like we are thrown like a 2-sentence argument and we're supposed to have this entire online debate over it, when this is something that needs like way more nuance and like thought and care put into it than a couple TikToks and a million comments. You have comments saying, stop trying to victimize yourself, stop trying to be oppressed. There's real disabilities that need accommodations for. Being late is not a disability. Very little context. The context was you wanting accommodations for being late to work. I have time blindness, so I set alarms for everything. I don't expect someone to do the work of 2 people because I didn't have enough self-discipline. And the big vibe
Exactly.
is like, oh, if
Exactly,
you think
bro.
you can show up
That's what I'm
late, you're just
saying.
affecting someone else at your job who has to deal with your
Mm-hmm.
downfalls. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
argument is kind of assuming a lot. We literally know
What is it
nothing
assuming?
about the position that she's applying for. We know nothing about what she's getting done,
So,
about whether
what
or not
difference
this
does
is
that make?
something that could have flexibility on time if it is something
What
that she
difference does
struggles
that
with.
make?
There are jobs out there to fit people's needs all around the world, and of course we need to be more accessible to people as a whole, but that's really not like how our country works. And as long as there are able-bodied workers who are willing to fill that spot, then they're not going to hire someone who has a disability or has a disorder or a problem or some psychological thing that prevents them from being able to do the work they want to get done. I just think all of these people need to get offline. Like it's too much.
A future for our nation, and what future is there to fight for? Because arousing mass amounts of hate, judging people, making mass assumptions, and being stuck in a cognitive loop without even knowing it, and then doing exactly what the algorithms want is seen as normal. But you know what? It doesn't have to be.
So the main takeaway I'm getting from this is that political polarization and capitalism has caused people to fall in these echo chambers where they think that something is a little bit irregular, and then they see everyone else commenting on how that thing is irregular, and suddenly they're a part of the swarm that is hounding this person. And of course, like, this is a very real thing. I think that what she says holds value. I think in this case, it is a situation where you fell into the wrong algorithm full of people who don't really respect being open to that kind of terminology or whatever. And although obviously I see what the struggle would be in employers hiring someone who already is telling them that they have time management issues, but I don't really feel
Yeah.
like that is the argument that's being made here. I think the argument that's being made here is basically that the people who are attacking her are really only doing so because they're caught in this cognitive loop that our society has put on them to cause something like this to happen. Listen, I don't know, I'm tired of this. It's just like, I don't know, I'm too tired to to debate this anymore.
It doesn't
Originally,
make any sense, bro. It
I
doesn't.
thought it was going to be funny. It just seems like,
I'm gonna try
I don't
this
know,
one more
everyone
time.
is just, it's like the internet. There's one of those days where I'm just watching internet fights and I'm like, this is just depressing. I get where these people
It's
are
not
coming
really that
from. I'm
depressing.
not
It's
saying
kind of
anyone in
funny.
this story is really inherently a bad person, but I do think that, like, this is just a gross side of TikTok that doesn't need to exist. It's not really fun. It's just sort of like the next main character that's saying shit because she doesn't feel understood, and it's, I don't know, it's sad. So this is the last video. Let's watch it.
Once upon a time, I thought that political polarization and social media algorithms radicalizing us wasn't as big of a deal. That was before I started trending online and became the target for mass amounts of hate.
Oh
on
my
TikTok.
God.
I've
See,
seen
and that's
this
what I'm
hate and division
talking about. Just
firsthand in
that
a way that I haven't before.
before
And you
I
know what?
started
Political
trending
polarization used to
online.
be one of the top issues in the United States.
I think there might be a little
Oh
bit
my God, what is
too
up
much
with
of this
this
that is being boiled down to
sensitivity?
this, like, bigger picture of political radicalization and political polarization or whatever. But I don't know. I don't really think that, like, telling the people who are making fun of you that they are just like a pawn in the online debate circle of people who believe this one thing and believe this other thing, and it's just like very broad umbrella topics that have, you know, nuance and need conversation. And I don't really think that the best way to teach this girl about the world is to just bully her, like, unrelentlessly for,
I
like,
think so.
days. I don't
I
know. I
think
guess
so.
that's all I have to say about that. Like,
I wouldn't say
it's, I don't
bully.
know.
I
There's
wouldn't say
funnier stuff
bully.
that has
You
happened on
shouldn't bully
TikTok. I just feel like
anybody.
this
I
is,
really
like,
don't think you should bully her.
overall
But
kind of icky. And that's not to
she
say
needs
that
a
there
wake
aren't
up
people
call.
out
And
there
if it
who
was
in
from
the
her
future
mom,
I will make fun of for
like,
thinking that
for
they
real.
are ignorant or thinking that they are fighting the wrong fight or whatever. And I don't know, I'll worry about that when I get there. Okay? Stop worrying about me. I don't know. I want to know what you guys think. I think this is an interesting conversation to have. You could have this conversation forever. I didn't really even dive into my specific, like, beliefs on every facet of it. I guess my overall thesis for the video is that the internet was too mean on this one, and we need to, like, relax, because everyone was way too mad when they heard someone who is most likely younger than them upset about a big change that is happening in their life that they think they might struggle with. And if you're at home and you feel like you're a student or a worker who wants to do things, who wants to complete tasks, and intrinsically knows that they want to have a specific job, but they can't
I don't
seem
give up on
to
for
get it
a
all
minute.
done, or they seem to not be able to manage their time correctly. If you struggle to be able to do something that it seems like every other person is able to do, make sure you get yourself checked.
All right, all right, all right. Thank you, Nick, for the self-help talk. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyway, time blindness. It's not a thing. It's not real. It's not real. It's an excuse. That's what it is. It's an excuse for people to act like they have a complex disorder when we all really have the same disorder, and we just need to figure out how to live with it and function and be high functioning. Be a high functioning individual with our disorder. That's what we need to do. We don't need to make excuses or accommodations. We need to figure this stuff out ourselves. You can get help, but you're figuring it out yourself, right? You're figuring out how to fix yourself by getting help. And there's nothing wrong with getting help. because you can't do everything on your own. So there's nothing wrong with getting help. But when you start making excuses and accommodations instead of getting help, that's when there's an issue. All right, so this game is way like so hard, bro, so hard. I'm gonna have to put a pause on this. It's 10 o'clock. It's 10:20. Probably gonna look through a run through of how to finish this level, but yeah, we'll come back